We're live.
Hello.
Hello.
La, la, la. It's very hard to even be remotely jovial. I was just talking about that. But hello, all. Welcome.
In spite of all of the genocide, welcome to Thursday Night Generational Change.
It's just terrible. And no, Mario, don't be putting out like hashtag genocide with a J. That would not be my thing.
Yeah, no, that's not cool at all.
He tries to take everything with Jen and puts it out there. Yeah, so it is Thursday Night Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter, and we've got a new computer, which is hopefully promising.
Yeah.
Our technology is somewhat limited, as we know. But
we're somewhat limited.
It took a long time to get there.
Yeah.
And it was an in-kind contribution, seeing as how we're demonetized.
Right. It was an in-kind contribution from my husband.
So a lot of you obviously have been paying close attention to everything that's going on right now. We've got a lot of topics to cover tonight. Perhaps the son of Vermont will make an appearance.
Again, that's what we were just talking about. I find it really hard to even be entertained by that right now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that Bernie doesn't. I honestly, I don't know what it is. And what a lot of people pointed out, including Waleed Shahid, who worked for him and was basically overseeing the Justice Democrats. I mean, like, he came out forcefully and said, "You have given the exact same response as I like to say, President Tony Blinken, but Secretary of State Antony Blinken basically gave the exact same response." And we're going to obviously have a lot to talk about tonight with our esteemed panel. But of course, this is going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And
at what point do I get to have my rant about Moskowitz?
If you want to have it now, I think this might be as good a time as any to have it. Jen, please entertain the crowd with who is Representative Jared Moskowitz.
Okay, so Jared Moskowitz is the representative of the district, the congressional representative district, like north of us. And that seat was occupied for many years by Ted Deutsch, who now works for whatever AIPAC-related type of subsidiary that he works for. So
Ted
now
Deutsch basically works side by side with Mr. Greenblatt of the AD.
Right. So this seat, of course, then got bequeathed to the son of basically a wealthy Dem bundler donor person here. And now the person who's sitting there is the son of said person. And Jared Moskowitz, this is the thought that these are the Jews in Congress that represent, not just represent South Florida, but represent Jews in general. Like, this man is seeking to have Rashida Tlaib censured for thinking that we can't trust the information that's just being handed to us, and we should have an investigation into the hospital bombing in Gaza. He actually said that she refuses to accept, and that's the refuses to accept. And what he's talking about are the talking points handed down by basically the State Department or whoever is handing out the talking points. And so he thinks she should be censured for seeking an investigation into something. Could he be more fascist? Like, it's unbelievable to me. And this is, and like, now we're not even allowed to investigate things.
Jared Moskowitz has been in Congress for a hot minute, and he's put himself in hot water several times already.
What was the other? With insider trading, including
being called out by Unusual Whales for his stock trading policies. So far, not so good. In addition to that, he's not hid in any way, shape, or form his disdain for the working class left. He represents both Boca Raton and Parkland, Florida.
Right. Like, as you can imagine, his big issue is wearing orange and gun control. That's basically the talking point for anybody from Parkland.
He represents a very wealthy district. Not that the district doesn't have very working class areas, but it is essentially known that Boca Raton and Parkland, the two wealthiest suburbs in South Florida outside of Miami Beach, is basically where a lot of the political influence and money and power comes from. Those of you familiar with the likes of Fred Guttenberg, that is part of the district. And Mr. Guttenberg made it his mission to get Mr. Moskowitz into Congress. Mr. Moskowitz is very much like a Matt Gaetz. His father, his late father, was a very powerful political powerhouse, if you will, here in South Florida.
Attorney.
And much like Mr. Gates' father, who helped him get into Congress, Mr. Moskowitz's father did the same for him before he passed away. And so now you're faced with another prospect of a young representative in a district that isn't as safe as some of the others.
Yeah,
but
and he's 42. He's like 42. He's like 10 years younger.
But will certainly attempt to sit in that seat for as long as humanly possible. The problem that we have here in South Florida is much like a lot of parts of the country, including where Katie currently lives and other parts like, we'll say, San Francisco, LA. The Jewish populations, while have an arc that bends towards strong levels of liberalism and working class ideology, is also stoked very heavily in Zionism. And that is something that is very common in South Florida. And so now you have not just Wasserman Schultz, who's our representative.
Now you've got Moskowitz, by the way, and he's on Fox News talking about this. The truth is, I don't think of him as a real Democrat. I mean, he's pretty Republican, but this is the quote that he gave on Fox. I continue to be disappointed in members of Congress who are not willing to listen to U.S. intelligence and listen to the Biden administration, who have said Israel had nothing to do with the issue that happened in the parking lot of the hospital. Oh, yes, that's right, Jared. We should just listen to them because they said so. I can't even. We're going to just listen to them.
We're going to get into it with the panel. One of the things we're going to obviously talk about is the president of the United States coming out saying, I don't trust the numbers of what the Palestinians are saying in terms of how many people have been slaughtered. And then people in Palestine proceeded to present an actual line item of all of the people that have been killed. This is a genocide.
But we're gonna trust numbers from the JDF.
No, we're not going to trust those numbers. And the good news is that even though this is a very risky part of the country to take a firm stand on this particular issue, it is absolutely necessary to do it, because if you don't do it, as you have said many times, history is going to be a very unkind judge to those who stood on the sidelines and watched literally thousands of people, in some cases thousands of people a day, get slaughtered. And not only are they being slaughtered, the bare minimum that they're even suggesting right now, which is an admission of an actual genocide, is that maybe we should allow the bare minimum of food and water to get in there. So what they're admitting is that, yes, they are systematically killing the people that are living in Gaza.
Well, and I honestly think that the things that have been set in motion when you deprive people of resources and housing and water and like all these things, that even, let's say, you keep sending in aid, that the exponential damage. That the whole thing is absurd. So you're sending $100 million of aid, but you're sending $100 billion to bomb them. The cognitive dissonance is just off the charts to me. And yeah, I feel like I'm living in. This is really like the Biff Tannen universe in the Back to the Future. Like I'm in the bizarro world.
But you really have to give it to Rashida Tlaib. She basically had to come to terms with the reality that, yes, this may ultimately cost her political career, but she doesn't care, because the people, her people, are too important. And at least somebody on Capitol Hill decided that doing the humane thing is more important than doing the self-serving thing. Something a lot of our representatives, including ours, can learn from.
Well, and by the way, the fact that not a single Jewish person in Congress is standing up on this.
And there's quite a few of them.
Oh yeah, there's lots of them. There's a lot that people just don't even know, that are just, people that are there, but not a single Jewish person can seem to find their way to take the right stand on this in Congress.
Rightfully so.
I find it infuriating. I can barely not yell. Like, I'm so angry.
Yeah.
I have so much anger.
And I honestly, I totally get the sentiment of where people are coming from. It is a very dreary time, to say the least.
I spent a whole hour in therapy yesterday, just like this. I am like, cannot stop being angry.
Well, that's also the whole concept about having something done in your name, which is something that I think a lot of people have a problem with. But as has been made clear, there are so many layers to this, including the connection between Netanyahu and Hamas and how the government has been funding it for quite some time. This, to me, almost seems like a setup, that this was deliberately orchestrated because the intention was always to get rid of the Palestinian people living in Gaza. And now they feel that they have their opportunity. The problem, of course, is that the general public is not buying it. They are very adamant that what is happening here is a genocide, no matter how many ways that they try to, brush it aside and say that it doesn't exist. It does exist, and it is insufferable how there are people who think that they're going to be able to get away with it going forward. So, nevertheless, it is a sad time. It is a dreary time, but it is a time to have a conversation.
We need to consolidate the Jews that are going to be on the right side of history. That's what I feel like.
Well, if there is somebody who...
I feel like, they're waiting, the Christians, that the Christian Zionists don't care. They just want us to be there for the rapture to happen. We're nothing but,
Well, that's the evangelicals.
That's what I mean. Like the people that are real, but that's generally who are Christian Zionists.
Well, we are... one of our guests, Mr. Lee Camp, will be here in about 10 minutes. And our other guest, Marc Steiner, just waiting on word from him. But let us not wait, because it is always great to catch up with our friend. From the Katie Halper Show, she kicks butt, takes names, and
has been very nicely covering this issue. And there's certain people that are doing a really good job covering it. So, and
of course, Katie's one of them.
Yes.
Katie Halper, welcome back to Generational Change.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey, I've been really appreciating a lot of your stuff. It's been very, very solid. Very solid.
Thanks.
I appreciate. Yeah. So, obviously we're living in this genocidal hellscape is what I feel like we're in. I mean, how are you dealing with it? I feel like I cannot stop thinking about this all the time. I feel like I cannot stop. I've been just doing nonstop research, nonstop, everything I can do to know everything I can know. And I don't see this ending anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't see it ending anytime soon either. So I guess keep researching, keep doing whatever you're doing right now, because I think it's going to be something that we have to talk about for a really long time, unfortunately.
Well, and the thing is, and my husband actually asked me, he's like, is this going to be some sort of Vietnam thing? And I'm like, no, that's Ukraine. This is going to not be able to take that long, because quite honestly, how long can people live? You're not I don't think it doesn't really matter how long, if they're not being bombed or what's going on, because even if you just turn off the water and people don't have resource, how long can people live? I'm looking at, there's going to be 1 million dead people within another couple of weeks.
Yeah. I mean, it's a genocide, as you guys were saying. I don't know if people realize that now. I think that, some people are in denial or ignorant. Other people are just cynical and bad people, and they know that, and they don't really care, and they're happy to see Israel ethnically cleanse Gaza. So yeah, it's really disturbing, and you just have to try to do whatever you can to raise people's awareness about what's happening.
I mean, do you see, to me, the fundamental basis of the language of how people are talking about it is very, very symbolic of their thoughts on it. This is not a war. This isn't a conflict, right? That's not real. That's sort of in their make-believe mythology, wherein we were all taught that the Arabs all want to kill us, which now they might in that area. I don't blame them. I would want to as well. But
fine. I mean, the people there, yeah.
But so that's the thing. So if you're born in captivity, this is something that I have to, keep reminding people. If you're born in captivity and all you know of your oppressor is that it's a Jewish state,
right?
There's not going to be a lot of love there. And so and from what I'm understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, the reports have been that they have been treating hostages, well, the ones that I guess aren't getting bombed by Israel, but that hostages are being treated, I guess, humanely and kindly. Is that?
Yeah. I mean, the ones that have been released have confirmed that. Obviously, not all of them have been released. Some have been killed. There's a lot of fog of war. But yeah, there are people who talked about there was one woman who they came into her house and they wound up leaving, but they asked if they could have a banana. They were calming the kids down. They said, we're not going to hurt you because we're Muslim. But you can't say any of that or report any of that, because then you're being Hamas sympathizers, and Hamas is like ISIS, is what people like to say.
Yeah, I keep referencing, bringing people back to that. This is not the equivalent of, people say Israel has a right to defend itself. And I agree, Israel does have a right to defend itself. And if Israel were attacked by a sovereign nation, I would suggest that they would be able to defend themselves. But this is more akin to a slave rebellion or people in a concentration camp breaking out and, just seeking some sort of self-determination. And so to refer to this as if it's a conflict is just, that's the first, and I feel like the primary problem in how people are seeing this.
Right. I mean, one side is living under occupation and a blockade. Another real piece of misinformation that we hear again and again is that Israel pulled out of Gaza, Israel left Gaza. They are subjecting Gaza to a blockade. It's a humanitarian crisis. I mean, you see Israeli politicians on TV saying there's no humanitarian crisis in Gaza. It's like unreal how dishonest the Israeli government is. And, then if you say that, oh, you're perpetuating an anti-Semitic trope. Sorry. Powerful governments have evil people in them, whether they're Jewish or not. And Netanyahu is evil. And there's some good politicians out there. We spoke to one on Useful Idiots today, Ofer Kassif, who has been dismissed for 45 days by the Knesset for criticizing Israel's response to October 7th. He, of course, also wholeheartedly condemned what Gaza did, is very emphatic that there's no excuse for it. He sees it as not unpredictable, but he also thinks he doesn't justify it. But yeah, this is, the dissent, the crushing of dissent here and in Israel is also really stunning and disturbing, and everyone should be upset about it.
It's freaking me out. It's actually really scary. It's extremely it's really, we're seeing like I look at our propaganda machine about Israel and it's like Goebbels did. Like this is like out of the Hitler playbook, like the way that they're putting out the propaganda. It's just off the wall. And that so many people are repeating the talking points is to be expected. The people will just eat whatever is fed to them. But, again, I find it very hard to condemn the actions of people that are living in captivity. You can, if you can't come and go and somebody's controlling what goes in and out, that's a concentration camp. I mean, I don't understand how that's not considered a concentration camp. If you cannot leave and people cannot come in, and what is that?
Well, it's kind of, it's the same, the simplest question to ask somebody, for me as an observer looking on the outside in, if you can't admit at the bare minimum that Gaza is an occupied territory, then the conversation's over. It's not even worth having.
Well, that's the problem.
Right.
Is there's too many people that just don't see that baseline.
I don't know if they don't see it. I think they're just in total denial about it. I think at this point they have to be, just like they're in total denial that over 3,000 kids have been murdered already. And it's going to be a lot more. So at some point, the question gets asked, well, how much of this are you willing to tolerate? And this whole argument about how, well, Hamas attacked us. Yes, Hamas attacked you. How did that happen in the first? It's the same thing about, well, why did Putin invade Ukraine? It's like, this doesn't just happen in a vacuum. But
that's how it's presented.
Of course it is. And it's been presented very effectively because that's all they talk about. It's just like CNN saying that, they were totally torturing the hostages. And one of the older hostages came out and said, no, actually, we were treated fine. This is, it's politics, if you will. But the narrative has to be maintained, because if the narrative isn't maintained, you can't keep slaughtering everybody, because then eventually the narrative gets turned on you and there's no going back.
I think it's just, look, I mean, it makes sense to me why they don't like Jews. It does. They don't, especially people.
Well, because Israel is the place that constantly pretends that being Jewish and Zionist are interchangeable, which is ironically an anti-Semitic trope. And the people who like to insist that being Jewish is the same thing as being Zionist are anti-Semites who talk about the Zionist this, the Zionist that when they mean Jews, and people like the ADL, AIPAC, and Israel.
Yeah. Well, you want to conflate it, because if you don't conflate it, then you can't constantly be playing the anti-Semitism card when people speak out against Zionism. But I'm just not taking this anymore. Like, I am rejecting it. I'm not letting anybody get away with that crap. I cannot deal with these people anymore. I am just like losing my mind.
Katie, what has been, especially in your New York circle of Jewish friends, what has been the overall reaction to all of this, whether they're saying it publicly or not? Do most of them condemn what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, in New York, my friends in New York City are members of Jewish Voice for Peace. Or
are you a member? I'm a member.
Yeah, I am. So
yeah.
they've been getting arrested, going to demonstrations. I mean, my parents see it the same way I do. There are some older people who see it very differently. I think some older people and younger people really think that Israel makes Jews safe, and that without Israel, Jews would be at risk. And so whatever Israel does, even if it's not pretty, you need to do it. Like, that's, I think, the biggest.
Are you feeling safe? Is this making you feel safe?
No, I mean, it's a counterfactual, but also, yeah, obviously there's a lot. I mean, it's safer to be a Jew in America than it is to be a Jew in Israel. And what makes this whole thing so sad is, like, the whole state was created it wasn't because people cared about anti-Semitism. Like, the European powers that helped create the state, they kept their racist immigration laws on the books, even after World War II. They wanted Jews not in the United States, so they knew that they had to kind of like pretend to care. So they helped send them to Israel. And what's really sad is that I don't blame, like, if I had been a Holocaust survivor, I'm not saying I wouldn't have, if someone said, here, go here, maybe I would have gone there, but that doesn't make it right.
Well, no, and there's also a difference. We're going to bring in our other two guests, but like, and I was thinking about this a lot. There's a big difference between seeking refuge somewhere and integrating with people that live there and live. You can go there.
Right.
They were allowed to go there. And it's the irony is where they were unsafe. Like, my family left Russia at the turn of the century from the pogroms. So like, the anti-Semitism in Russia and in Europe was off the charts.
Right.
So then they go to the place where it's safe and they're accepted. And instead of just living there, being safe and accepted, that wasn't enough.
Where did they go?
When they went to Palestine, because
your family did that? Okay.
No, not my family, but a lot of the settlers that went there prior to it becoming an issue, just were living there.
Right. Without trying to displace other people. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. That's my point. Like, they did have a safe place to go. That would have worked.
Right.
But pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered, and that is where we are.
So let's bring in our other two esteemed guests for the very first time, and hopefully not the last time. Anyone who's a friend of the Real News Network is a friend of ours, and was brought together by our labor counterpart, Max Alvarez. And obviously is Jen, big fan.
Well, yeah, I mean, and what's funny is I've only seen him in pictures because his show is radio, it's audio. And so Marc has a show called Not in Our Name that he has had going for a while. Like, I mean, long before this.
Talk about a perfect time to have a show with that name.
Well, because this is like the real deal. So I just thought, we have our Deconstructing Zionism series, so I thought we should cross-pollinate.
Indeed. Marc Steiner, welcome to Generational Change.
Good to be with you.
Hi, it's nice to meet you. I appreciate your work. I appreciate your interviews. So thank you for that.
Thanks.
I appreciate it. And last but not least.
He's a funny guy, and I mean that in the most endearing sense possible. And he is always a welcome guest on our show, and is always speaking truth to power, and actually goes to other parts of the world to really see how things are not as bad as they're. Even though we are led to believe that the United States is the greatest place in the history of the world, I'm sure that our next guest will probably beg to differ in a number of ways.
But he's a communist. He was with the Russians.
Yeah. Well, he was
with them.
He's still welcome here. Lee Camp, welcome back to Generational Change.
Hey, is this the meeting of Jews for Palestine?
Yes. This is the anti-Zionist tribal powwow. So do you guys know Marc?
Katie,
Do you guys know Katie and Lee know?
No, Katie. Yes.
Katie, it's good to finally meet you.
Yeah, you too, Lee.
Lee, do you know Marc?
I do not know Marc. It is good to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
So you've been doing this for a long time, Marc. Obviously, I caught your show because I subscribe to Real News Network, and I caught it. But it goes pretty far back. The episodes go pretty far back. Would you talk about what inspired you to start? Because it's called Not in Our Name, and it's a regular series that you do on the Real News Network, which, by the way, I recommend people check that out. It's really good. So, like, what inspired you to start that series?
Well, I go way back too. So it goes back to after the war in '67. I'll make this quick, but after the war in '67, which I actually volunteered to fight in, but didn't end up fighting in, I began to meet a lot of left-wing Israelis and Palestinians over the next 6 months after that. And it began to really make me start rethinking what I had thought, having been, when I was younger, a member of Habonim and also a member of Hashom HaChatzer. I was, this kind of turned me around. So for that shifted my thinking and my activity and my work. And so for the next bunch of decades, I really became involved in anti-Zionist work. And now this may be a little contradictory to what we're talking about tonight, but I've come to a point philosophically to be a non-Zionist. Because I think it's a very complex subject and not so simplistic. And and I've been in touch with folks now, what's happening in Israel, Palestine. My family happens to live on Mifal Sim and Kisufim, which were two of the kibbutzim that were attacked by Hamas. They're my relatives from South America who ended up emigrating to Israel, all from the same family out of Poland. So it is a very complex subject. I mean, not complex enough that the occupation has to be ended. The right-wing Israeli government has to stop. All that is true, but I think that there's a complexity sometimes that we have to wrestle with that gets lost in the midst of our anger and passion.
Yeah. Lee, where are you on this? Like, I'm not sure, like, I know that you're tribe, but it's not like I think of that very often, whereas like Katie covers this a lot. And I know Marc from his particular show on this. So, I mean, I know that you obviously stand in solidarity with Palestinians, but like,
Yes.
Where are you, Lee, on this?
Well, I'm just a big Netanyahu fan, just all the way. Jen, I think the only time we've met in person was several years ago, where a room full of us were trying to convince you to change your views on Israel.
Oh, really?
Well, you know what? It's interesting you say that, because I remember that conference, brand new Congress, and I was definitely still in this whole hopeful two-state solution mentality at that point. I was still doing mental gymnastics at that point. Yes. Yeah.
No, but I mean, so I have done many segments on this through Redacted Tonight and stuff like that, but it's definitely not my go-to topic. I'm not just always on about Israel. I am right now. I've done 3 weeks straight on it, but yeah, it's I've been for ending the apartheid state for years and years now, and I've been covering it more and more recently. I felt like I've understood all the intricacies more in the past, probably 3-4 years, and things like that. I think even for years being against the apartheid system, I don't think I had really come to terms with the sheer amount of the war crimes and that they're truly willing to just bomb children endlessly. And so that is sitting deeper with me the past several years, I think.
Yeah. Do you guys notice like that maybe this last incident, I mean, I know that our mainstream media is treating this like all of this started on October 7th and we have no idea where that came from. And obviously we know that's not true, but do you guys feel any different? I kind of feel like something has shifted here, at least around me, where at least that it seems to me that there's a lot more people speaking up for Palestinians, not necessarily enough Jews in my vicinity, but a lot more where it's like, I feel like it's even like 50-50. And so like, I feel like I'm noticing that this recent series of terror might have shifted something in some way. Do you guys see that at all?
I think that there's been a change, but I also think that this is a harder thing, like, because this included a violent attack. that was perpetuated by Hamas, as opposed to just seeing Palestinians being physically attacked. I think it's been harder, kind of understandably, it's been harder for people to stay in solidarity. Now, you have to keep your solidarity because Hamas is not Palestinians. And if you care about Israelis and Jews, I mean, as Gideon Levy, the Israeli journalist who very strongly condemned what Hamas did, but he said you can't like have 2 million people living in an open air concentration camp and not expect to pay a price. That was like his Haaretz op-ed title. So I think there's this weird thing happening where people are more pro-Palestinian, but I feel like a lot has been lost. I mean, it's a bit of a counterfactual because who knows how much support there'd still be if we hadn't made all the progress that we had. And we can't let the fact that there was a violent attack by Hamas, we can't let that change that we are standing with the people of Palestine. I think it was easier in some ways for people
that's not
to stand with
even
Palestinians before this had happened.
To me, it's not even a deal breaker. I got to be honest with you. Like, I can say, yes, massacring innocent people is horrible, but I can also say that if I was born in captivity, I'd be doing the same thing.
No, I'm not saying it's a deal breaker. I'm saying for some people, I think that it has.
It's not even.
I might not agree with that completely. I mean, I think I was reading today and listening to Nelson Mandela, and one of the things he talked about and that I was reading and listening to was that the persecution and oppression and occupation of Palestinians has to end. He was also saying that, and I think this is something that I learned a long time ago from different revolutionaries, people like Che Guevara and others, but Mandela, is that there's a Che Guevara quote that says, "Every time you pull the trigger, you die 1,000 deaths." And Mandela was very clear when he talked about what was going on, that we have to wage whatever it is we have to wage in a different way. And it does not include intentionally killing civilians. I don't care what the struggle is. You know, I mean, I think that becomes, that's something that really sticks with me. And I think that one of the really mass contradictions in all this, and it's just, is that I don't think Hamas knew it. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know. But the places they attacked, were full of Israelis who fought for peace and justice for Palestinians.
Yeah.
Not like they attacked some right-wing place where you're going after folks that want to destroy Palestine and not give Palestinians rights or a Palestinian nation. They attacked the exact opposite. And I think so any war is like horrendous and ugly. You know, there was I was in Cuba in 1968, and there was a poster I still have. And that poster really affected me when I got there in 68. And the poster was a picture of all of the Holy Land, all of Israel, Palestine. It had a Palestinian flag on one side and an Israeli flag on the other. And across it said, "One state, two peoples, three faiths." Now, that might be pie in the sky, but some form of that has to be kind of pushed for to end this madness. I mean, the Jews who emigrated to Israel are not going anywhere. The Palestinians live there. That's their home. Some accommodation has to happen, just like the accommodation that happened in South Africa. The Boers didn't leave. The English didn't leave. They became South Africans. So we have to think about what it is we have to do to create a world for everybody who lives in that place. And when I talk to my family and my friends who are in the Zionist world, and they talk about all the people who were killed and the children who were killed, and it's horrendous. I mean, absolutely horrendous. What I say to them is, when you look at those pictures of young Israeli kids who were killed, why aren't the pictures of all the thousands of Palestinian children next to them that were also killed?
The ones who are, and also the ones who, I mean, our government is helping kill.
Yes. Oh. Right. So, I mean, it's I'm sorry, I'll stop. Go ahead.
No.
Let's take it.
Well, I was just going to say, and whenever they show the photos of the hostages, let's remember that Hamas has 200 hostages and Israel has 10,000. They had 5,000 Palestinians in prison. I'm not counting the Gaza as an open air prison at the moment. But they had 5,000 in prison for nothing charges, basically. And they've doubled that since October 7th. So they've grabbed another 5,000 Palestinians. So really, they have 10,000 hostages, and Hamas has 200.
Ali
And
Abu
let's-
Nima actually said, I had, just really quickly, Ali Abu Nima, I had him on my show the other night, and he actually said they're not hostages because they're not asking for a ransom. They're prisoners or captives. Anyway,
they're political prisoners.
Yeah.
And they get randomly picked up. They get randomly harassed and picked up in the West Bank all the time. It's not like this. That's not new. They've been acquiring Palestinian bodies in prison there for a long time.
One of the biggest problems that we're seeing right now that is painfully obvious is just how powerful AIPAC and ADL is in the political arena. They have both major political parties by the balls, and having them essentially try to prove how much more pro-Israel one side is versus the other. And of course, that starts with our president, who not only has sworn full allegiance to Netanyahu and his government, but decided that it was necessary to go on national TV today and say that the Palestinian people are lying about how many of their people have been killed. It does not appear to be, at least from where I stand, and obviously hopelessly upset at Senator Sanders for not even attempting to make some type of an actual stand with his statement today. There does not appear to be anybody other than a handful of the left members of Congress who are really making any type of a firm stand about the genocide that is taking place right now. In fact, it seems like most of them just want to pretend like it's not happening and not even address it. Why do you guys think that they are so tepid about even suggesting that maybe we need a ceasefire in the situation at the bare minimum to at least try to get things started in terms of a peace negotiation?
I mean,
I think maybe if people, oh no, Mark.
no, can you go ahead? I'll wait. Go ahead.
Well, if people, I think that sadly, like, if people make the connection between how a ceasefire saves lives of not just, I mean, it's really sad that we can't just say like Palestinian civilians don't deserve to be killed and that's not enough. But I think that people need to make the connection between a ceasefire being good for not just Palestinians. It's not good for them. It's like that's not even the right way to say it. It's stopping the genocide should be enough of a goal. But I think for some people it's not. And the fact is that bombing indiscriminately is not going to be keeping these prisoners, these Israeli prisoners, safe. And we already had some, like there was an Israeli woman on the Israeli media. I think they removed her article, but Ali Abu Nima wrote about it at Electronic Intifada. And she talked about how, is the IDF shot at people and killed Israelis. They're not prioritizing saving Jewish life. They pretend that that's what they're guided by, and they're not. It's revenge and ethnic cleansing.
And the Israeli military has a directive. I think it's called a Hannibal Directive.
Yeah.
That's basically like if they take one of ours, kill them all, and even if the hostage dies. Yeah. And they've proven this again and again. So I think they have no intention of saving these hostages. They want to destroy Hamas, and they're willing to murder everyone in the process. And that's their strategy. They have no strategy of getting back hostages.
I don't even think they care about murdering Hamas. I think they want to commit a genocide. I think they want to use those people for manufacturing
everything.
Consent. And I think they stuck them there. And this was obviously something that could be foreseen. And now they're using it to ethnically cleanse people. And if they really and this is what's so disgusting. They're saying they're talking about whether or not they have a ground game. Instead of just cowardly dropping bombs indiscriminately over just random people, to me, it's even more disgusting and more dishonorable. It's like you're not willing to risk any of your people to go in there to go get Hamas. How badly do you want them? You're willing to kill all these innocent people, but you're not willing to risk one of your soldiers to even go in there on the ground and get the hostages.
And Mark, apparently the amount of firepower that has already been dropped on Gaza is the equivalent of the Hiroshima bomb that was dropped in World War II.
Well, I mean, Yeah, I mean, it's more than the firepower we used in Vietnam, and I mean, Israel has one intention here. The intention is, whether they get the hostages back or not, the intention is to clear Palestinians out of what is western and northern Gaza and push people to the south and the east, up against the border of Egypt. So that what they say, there'll be a buffer. And I think that one of the most important elements in this, to me, is that there are now a rising number of Jews, especially younger Jews, who say no and don't agree and say this has to end. That, to me, is part of the key of ending this. Part of the key, not the whole key. It's part of the key. And I think that this is. I'm not going to get too deep into these weeds here, but I think it's also a lesson what happens even with the people who experience a millennia of oppression to become the oppressor. And there's a real lesson in that as well. And it's the argument I had today back and forth with people who were supporting Israel was that they kept showing the pictures, and I kept saying 3,000 kids have died. Palestinian kids have been killed. So the numbers of people that we are annihilating is unacceptable on any plane, on any level. And I think that we need, I think that a massive kind of anti-war movement has to begin here, as it is across the globe. I mean, look, I was emailing back and forth with a friend of mine in Germany today, who is Israeli and who's a real activist and fighting against racism in Israel and left Israel. They now live in Germany. And, one of the things we talked about was the fact that the vast majority of almost 1 million Israelis who left Israel are on the left. They're living in Europe. They're living in Africa. They're living in Southeast Asia. They're living in the United States. And I think that the right has just taken hold. An extreme theocratic right has taken hold. Not that anything was ever wonderful before that, but this is the enormity of the power they have at this moment on the right is it has to be kind of exposed and pushed. And I think that it takes a lot to argue against that sometimes, because one of the arguments I've been having is that you can't. No, it's not anti-Semitic to oppose the Israeli government.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? That's a great segue, because one of the things that we have seen, and we've seen this for years, is the equating of anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. They are very quick to throw it, and for the most part, you can't really tell the difference between the two political parties anymore, because it used to be very often there would be the GOP who would throw it at the Dems and they would have to play defense. But now it seems that you have this section of the political left that the Democrats are trying to push as far away from the party as possible and bring in as many of those suburban Republicans. And you're seeing it now play out on social media. You're seeing them all saying, well, I don't really like Marjorie Taylor Greene, but if she gets that Rashida Tlaib out of Congress, I am totally on board with that. So the true colors are starting to show in so many ways. But I'm curious, as from where you guys all stand, as I mentioned before, obviously we have the power of AIPAC, we have the power of ADL and the Democratic Majority for Israel. There's a lot of money to go around. I am wondering if you guys think that there is going to be, not for a lot of people, but for some people, and perhaps some people of considerable consequence, that there will be a political price to pay in 2024 for going along with this.
I think some people will stay home.
You think?
And people have been saying that.
Yeah, I'm finding this race very interesting, especially now that RFK is running as an independent. I think that numbers is going to affect on both sides, and I think it definitely keeps it more interesting. But either way, and in any event, and none of that matters as far as the Palestine question, because they're all the same.
I think RFK is right of Netanyahu, actually.
It's possible. He's too far. He's so far right he can't get his. I say he can't get his head out of Rabbi Shmuley's tuchus.
Yeah. It's true.
Oh, I've made it very clear that there is no occupation in the West Bank. And no matter how often you try to tell me that I'm wrong, even if Dennis Kucinich leaves my campaign in protest, I will not change my position because
Was that why he left? Really?
that's what they say, and I'm willing to believe it.
That
I
was
didn't-
really good. That was good. You could take that on the road.
You know,
He's got a
interesting-
bunch of them.
Well, hey, listen, I haven't gotten to Bernie yet because he's getting his too. The problem is that I actually went to I actually went to RFK's announcement in Philadelphia, and it was a very interesting group. There was about 3,000 or 4,000 people that were there. He had a crowd. There's no question, and he's going to be a factor in this race. But with that said, the people that were there was a considerable amount of Zionists within the group. And this was before October. Well, this actually is on October 9th, I think. And his speech, while it wasn't saber rattling in any capacity, there's no question where he's trying to, find his niche. There's a lot of people in this country with a lot of money that he's focused on, that he believes that if he leans into them very hard on this issue, that he's going to get them to come to his side. And I know there are people who believe that he, by some happenstance, is just going to pull more votes away from Trump. I don't believe that, because I think that the Democratic Party over the past 7-8 years, ever since the summer of 2015, they made a political calculation when it came to Bernie Sanders that the party is not going in this direction. And if that means that we must get the suburban Republicans into our party and push the working class left out completely, even if it means them going over to Donald Trump, then so be it. And that's ostensibly what they did, which is why you're seeing this whole reaction now of, well, is he going to take from that side? Is he going to take from that side? I don't know. To me, it's all a toss-up, but this is an issue for working people in this country where they're not fucking around. They are dead serious that if you support the genocide, there will be a political price to pay. Now, how big of a price? I don't know, because it doesn't seem like the political left can really get their act together, especially when it comes to the working class. Fantastic job by Sean Fain and UAW, but we obviously need to see a lot more of that in this country. And if we can unite on this particular issue, which I think we can, I think that would pay a lot of dividends, especially for those that are just giving a blank check in this case to Israel, as well as any of the, just sidestepping the whole issue of how many people are going to be killed. I do think that change could happen, but we really need to put our foot down as far as this is concerned.
I'm just jumping for a second. I think that, first of all, my analysis of what's happening in the presidential race, I don't think RFK is going to be much of a factor, period. Not just I personally think he's a maniac and out of his mind, but I don't think he's going to be much of a factor. And I think that when you look at the history of politics in this country and presidential politics in this country, unless Americans are on the ground fighting, Americans are dying, people really don't give a shit about anything that's happening overseas, period. And so who cares? The Arab American community cares, and the Jewish American community cares. Those are the communities that really care deeply, which is why Biden's playing the number he's playing to ensure that the majority of Jewish people in this country who vote Democrat are going to vote Democrat again. And I think that calculation has some flaws in it, but I think that's the real flaws. But I think that's the process that's taking place here, so I'm not sure how much this will play out in terms of what the future holds, in terms of domestic politics, except in areas like New York, LA, Baltimore, other places that have huge Jewish populations that are really concerned and watching this, whether they oppose what Netanyahu's government doing or supports it. I mean, that's where the fight's taking place there. But I don't think it'll affect the presidential campaign at all. And I think the more Kennedy speaks, the more insane he sounds. And I think I think people are just not going to go for him.
Yeah.
What about the Muslim population of Dearborn, Michigan, that have made it very clear that they are not supporting Biden in the election?
No, that's why I think it's the Arab American, Muslim American community, and Jewish American community that really are involved in this and care about it deeply and emotionally, but the rest of the country doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why
That's
we
the
saw that
problem.
report from CNN today about how, the GDP is up 4.9%, higher than expected. Yet inflation's the highest it's been in 22 years. I mean, they're literally spitting in your face, saying, yeah, the economy is working for a select portion of people. Everybody else, you're kind of screwed. And I think you're right. I think when you get right down to it, it ultimately comes down to the economy. And for working people in this country, the economy is
Bad.
failing completely.
It's all so depressing, though. My God. I mean, imagine, like these calculations that people make of like whether or not it matters. It's like, I mean, I know I'm stating the obvious, but the fact that Biden obviously would not do anything to just save lives. The fact that we have a president who wouldn't do the right thing. I mean, I know I sound naive to even think for a second that it would be that way, but it just sometimes it's more depressing than others when they're
Yeah,
like.
well, I will say that watching, what's the woman's name who spoke at the UN Council who said that we're not supporting the ceasefire, like that we're voting against the ceasefire, that spoke for us. She's our person at the UN.
Linda.
Do you know? I mean, I
Linda,
saw the forget her
Yeah,
name.
that one amazing woman. What's her name?
Yeah, that one woman who basically was justifying why we cannot support a ceasefire by continually saying
Linda Thomas Greenfield.
Was that what her name was? All I know is that's depressing. When you're watching your representatives,
the Irish woman, right?
They're not getting behind a ceasefire. That's not even, I mean, I feel like I'm living in the bizarro world.
Yeah. I don't get why a ceasefire is asking for too much.
Well, because that would stop the amazing amounts of profits that are going to come out of the military industrial complex. Am I missing something, Lee? Like, does that sound about right to you? That there's like a profit motive here? Do you think there might be?
There is a profit motive, but I think people overstate how much this stuff is done for, the billions that's funneled into the pockets of Raytheon and everyone else. It's in a deeper sense. For example, with Ukraine, the U.S. is making loads of money. I mean, the weapons contractor is making loads of money from it, but the real reason for it has to do with, trying to splinter Russia and trying to separate Russia from China and separating Russia from Europe. And so there's a deeper game going on. Sometimes people just go, well, they're just making a lot of money.
No,
and
but they are true believers. It's scary. These neocons.
Yeah, there's deeper machinations going on. And as Biden said back in the 80s, and then said again a year ago, if Israel didn't exist, we'd have to invent it. I mean, that's the level they view Israel in the area as a U.S. outpost in the Middle East. And that's kind of the deeper reasons for this have to do with that more than, Raytheon getting paid. So.
Yeah. Well, I just figured that, to me, that's the thought of why there cannot even be a discussion of a ceasefire. Like at this point, it just feels like it's free flowing.
Well, because the ceasefire doesn't help Israel in terms of what their true goal is, which is ethnic cleansing. If they ceasefire, it makes it harder for them.
Yeah. I do think that's more of it than even the. I agree with Lee's assessment.
Well, obviously, the whole concept here, and Mark, obviously, want to get your thoughts on this whole idea that basically, Bibi's government was waiting. I've been saying this ever since this happened, that they were waiting for their opening to commit a mass genocide and get away with it. And I think they feel they're in a position right now where they can actually get away with it. And that's why any talks of a ceasefire right now is not, you cannot entertain it. Because the second you put a pause on this is the second people have an opportunity to assess what needs to be done here in order to avoid mass catastrophe. We're already past that point. We're already in that place, and there's already rumors on the ground that the invasion has already begun. So I'm curious, how do you see this ending? Do you even see it being something that can be called off sooner rather than later? Or is this thing just going to blow up and we're going to just see a mass genocide regardless of any type of resistance we're trying to put forward?
So we lost ourselves for a minute. What I was saying was that's okay. What I was saying was is that unless there are powers outside the United States in particular that says no, this has to end. We want a ceasefire. It's not going to happen at this moment, and I don't see that happening. I think that the other side of it is that the more horrendous this battle gets, the more dangerous it gets for
yes,
not just Israelis and Palestinians, not just for the immediate world around Israel and Palestine, but for the entire globe and for this country and the politics of this country. This could really blow up in a huge way. And I think that, and I mean that in real terms, could blow up in a real way as well. So I think that and I don't see that happening with the present leadership inside the Democratic Party doing what they do that. I don't see them doing that. I think they're really strategically more concerned with securing the majority of the Jewish vote in America for the next presidential election.
Did you see that the Senate just unanimously adopted a resolution condemning pro-Palestine student protesters as, quote, in solidarity with Hamas, end quote, and anti-Semitic?
Yeah.
The resolution calls to, quote, fully and completely support Israel, end quote, in its war in Gaza. Everyone from Bernie Sanders to Rand Paul voted for this. I'm quoting Michael Tracy's tweet.
You said everybody from Rand
Paul to Bernie Sanders.
I didn't see that part.
That's
Bernie's
beyond
so disappointing on this.
That's like we've really crossed over. Like that's
Look, I feel it's time that I come on here and just let everybody know that if it was up to me, I would be the real Bernie Sanders and just telling everybody we need a ceasefire. Can you see it? Lee, you do a good job, Mark. Listen, we go back a long way. But hey, I gotta protect my good friend Joe. What can I say? I don't want to see Mr. Trump back in the White House again. Unfortunately, my hands are tied, literally and figuratively. I would like to call for a ceasefire, but I say humanitarian aid. I would like to call for no more war. I say just a little bit of war. And unfortunately, we are stuck in a very bad place right now. And Jen, help me out here. What am I supposed to do?
No, I'm disgusted. I'm just so disgusted. I can't even. I'm just disgusted. I can't believe you signed that shit.
I'm disgusted in myself too. But, like I said, I still want to sit on the Senate committees that I've been on for many years. I would really hope to get there. And getting thrown off would not be very helpful.
You just signed something fascist. Go away.
You can't say such a thing like that. I did what I could. Listen, it would have passed anyway.
Whatever.
I probably should have just voted no. But
yeah,
anyway, we don't want war. It's really bad. It's really terrible.
That's also what's going. I mean, what's going on at NYU? There's also this whole other thing where they're like locked in a room and they don't feel safe. Is that not the most entitled?
Oh my God! No, isn't that Columbia? That guy, that professor at Columbia. Shot Davida. Oh my God! The most
whatever that place.
Self-absorbed.
Where is that? Cooper Union.
Columbia. Wait, no, I'm talking about the guy, the business school professor, who's like, I cannot protect your children.
Oh no, I didn't hear that. I'm talking about the students at NYU that have locked themselves in where are they? They lock themselves in like a room because they don't feel safe because of the Palestinian protests.
But they made it out like they were going to get killed or something. I mean, look, like I said, propaganda is very real. I mean, I have no doubt that they were going to be hassled by the people that were out there, but to turn it into something more than what it really was.
They play the anti-Semitism card. They play the fear-mongering card. That's what they do.
What else can they play? What else do they have? And
you guys, I mean, I know Katie was on when we started, but I don't know if you're aware of this, Mark and Lee, about this. They're trying to censure Rashida Tlaib for suggesting that we have an investigation into the hospital bombing and that we shouldn't just believe what the talking points are. And Representative Jared Moskowitz from down here near us, he thinks that she should be censured for refusing to accept the information given to her. What do you think? I mean, like,
I think she should be arrested.
Did you see that? Like, did you guys see this story?
Yes, I did. I did see the story. I mean, look, this is a point of great confusion for people who are in power in America, especially the Democrats in power at this moment. They don't know how to handle this because it's going to the core of all their contradictions. And if the Democrats are going to have a huge problem unless they do what they're not going to do, which is to stand up and say, ceasefire now. Let us come in and help negotiate. There's got to be a way out of this so all people can live together. That's what they should be saying. And I think that there's also in the Jewish world, and I know this is real, that there's a huge schism going on. And the schism is around this issue. And I think that that's something that we also have to think about what that means. And the Democrats have to think about what that means. Anybody who wants to think about the future of America has to think about what that means, because young Jews are not thinking the same way as their parents and grandparents. Things are shifting.
Well, and I think what we're seeing is the collapse of the U.S. narrative in many ways. Yes, maybe not across certain areas of the United States, but around the world, the U.S. propaganda isn't holding sway any longer. And the idea that it might not even be holding sway with someone in Congress is too much to take. So that hints the overreaction. But it's like, 80% of the population of the world lives in countries that have not signed on to the U.S. sanctions against Russia, basically not signing on to be part of the proxy war. And the U.S. empire is waning, and with that is the first signs of that is the propaganda is waning. Like, people just aren't buying it the way they used to.
Good.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to get down these weeds or not now, but I'm not so sure how much it's waning. I think that the power of capital on this planet is huge, and they are at war with each other about who's going to control what. But I don't know about waning at this point anyway.
Well, I think what
you don't think the power of the United States is waning a bit in terms of they have not been able to pressure most of the world to join the proxy war in Ukraine. Almost every country in Africa won't be involved in it. You have a lot of countries throwing off their kind of imperial chains recently.
I mean, when you're talking about Africa, I mean, I don't want to get us too far afield here, but I mean, when talking about Africa, I mean, part of it has to do with part of the battleground of influence in the world is taking place in the African continent between China, Russia, and the United States. And that's part of the dynamic you're talking about. It's not simply saying, oh, no, we hate America. It's the battle going on inside of countries in post-colonial Africa that is where that dynamic is playing out. I think that it's and how it plays out is anybody's. I have no idea, but I think going back to what we're talking about, I think that what we're seeing in Israel Palestine at the moment is something that really could affect short and long term issues internationally on the planet. And I think that
so
and
scary.
I think it doesn't. It could explode into a much larger war. I think that politically in America, that most Americans could give a damn about Jews or Arabs, and so it's not an emotional issue for many people. They see Israelis as white, and they should be supported, especially in the evangelical world, which is huge in this country, and that's part of the political dynamic that we're facing here.
Most Zionists in America are Christian.
Yeah, exactly.
Way
more,
yeah.
Exactly.
There are more
Exactly.
Christian Zionists in America than there are Jews in the world by
That's
sheer
true.
number. Yeah.
That's insane.
So if the end game is Iran,
That's what I think. All
Yeah.
roads are leading to there.
Yeah, I still don't understand what is there just like an ungodly amount of oil that we're not aware of that Iran is holding on to that we need to get our hands on? I mean, I've never really fully understood. I understand the whole neocon trope about 1979 and, feeling that it is ours to control, but I still don't understand this obsession. We were once lucky enough to have, the General Clark on our podcast to talk about that, because he made it very clear that that's always been the neocon endgame, is to get into a war with Iran. But I'm still not 100% certain as to what the purpose of it would be. I still don't see what purpose it serves.
The only remaining strong country in the Middle East
Is
that
Iran.
isn't in line either fractured to the point it's a non-entity like Syria, or in line with U.S. hegemony is Iran. And Iran's very large and pretty powerful compared to, say, Iraq. And it does come down to oil, but I don't know that it specifically comes down to stealing the oil underneath, but it comes down to the petrodollar in many ways. The U.S. hegemony is based on the fact that we can print all the money we want and it doesn't lose its value for the most part. And the reason we can do that is because of the petrodollar, which also makes it the world's reserve currency. And Iran is outside of that system. Syria still is, but Syria was. And so we collapsed Syria. Iran left the petrodollar. Iraq left the petrodollar, and we did fun things with them. Libya, you had Gaddafi talking about an African currency, the gold dinar, and we collapsed Libya. So it does have to do with hegemony.
Well, I think that, first of all, the United States is not going to take on Iran directly. That's not going to happen.
I think that's true.
B, Iran has huge oil reserves, which they've yet to tap. And they are wielding their own political power, which hasn't been seen, obviously, or in the headlines, but it exists. And we're seeing it here play out between Israel and Palestine. And I think that, the United States and the West are trying to figure out, okay, how do you counter that shit? How do you stop it? They cannot get into a war in Iran. It's impossible. And the other thing is, what I keep thinking about and watching what's happening in Israel, Palestine, and watching what's happening around the world is that, and in this country especially, is the left has been diminished. And with the left being diminished, you have all these players like Iran, like Hamas, like Israel, like our own country, none of which we want to follow, none of which are talking about a different kind of world. So it's, we're in a very different place than we have been in a long time on this planet in terms of the struggle for justice and economic justice.
And that is great. Yeah, and that is a great place to wind down the conversation, because we are at a very unique time in history right now. Do I think that there's the possibility that something very substantial could happen, like a nuclear bomb? Look, I don't think anything's off the table at this point. A mass genocide, which is literally taking place as we speak, and the fact that we have a president and most of the politicians in this country just going right along with it. They're fully aware of what is happening. And even as more and more information comes out about how horrific this is turning into, and not attempting in any way to stop it.
No, they're just gaslighting everybody.
What do you guys think is going to be the short and long-term effects of this? And how do we continue as any kind of a populist left movement to continue to bind together in a more effective way? Because we are really disconnected in so many ways. But, one of the things that we obviously try to do here on our channel is try to bring as many voices together and as many groups together as possible, because we need each other.
I'm building a web.
Yeah, trying to anyway. Katie, lead us off. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. I'm trying to say something positive. I guess
It's hard, right?
the fact that people do seem to be paying. I like this. I'm very inspired by these Jewish organizations that are doing so much organizing.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to try to go to I'm going to a Jewish Voice for Peace protest tomorrow in New York City at 6 p.m.
That's going to be great. I think it'll be really big.
Yeah. And then then I'm going to try to go to the one in DC on the 4th. Yeah, this one is in Midtown, and you're supposed to wear all black. And
really?
I guess you have to get plan to be in Midtown, and exact location will be texted at 6 p.m. Be on time. All are welcome.
Interesting. Who's organizing that?
Jewish Voice for Peace.
JVP. Okay. And you have to
JVP.
wear black?
Are you in New York, Mark? Are you in New York?
Just a joke. I'm sorry.
No, are you in New York?
Am I? No,
Yeah.
I'm in Baltimore.
Oh, okay. Lee, you're in Baltimore, right?
I am in Baltimore now. Yeah.
You are? Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Oh, maybe you should get to DC.
No,
for
but I did
November.
want to ask you, Lee, are you gonna be in the Atlanta area any chance from November 10th to the 13th around that time?
Why would I ever do that to myself?
Well,
Um,
He already escaped
Is your
Virginia.
significant other planning on being in Atlanta in the November 10th to the 13th range?
What is
happening?
November 10th or 13th?
It's an action, a Stop Cop City. It's going to be a really big. It's like a weekend in the forest. Like it's a whole action there.
Actually, I don't know that she's making, but my partner Eleanor Goldfield was trying to make it down to that.
That's what I was saying. I would think because I know that she has been like very actively putting the information out about it.
Yeah, she's in touch with some of those groups, and yeah, I will likely be at the November 4th thing in DC.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, we got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's why we have these conversations. And that's why I think more of us should, you know, and the one thing that we don't do on our channel is, you know, go after the ones that are, especially on supposedly the left, that are so off on this issue, it's not even fun.
No.
You just got to work with the ones that are willing to recognize what is in front of us right now. It's a very dangerous time, but the work that you guys do in particular is so very important and so very needed.
Yeah, guys, if you're not following all of them, you should be. Thank you guys so much for coming on.
Guys, right before you go, please let everybody know how they can find you, follow your work, and maybe give you some money too.
Yeah.
All those great things.
Where are you, Mark?
I'm at realnews.org and at steinershow.org.
Yeah, guys, definitely check it out. And Lee, where are you now that you have been taken away from the Russians, and now that you've been severed your ties with them, with Putin? You severed your Putin ties.
I haven't been on RT for a year and a half, but I'm still censored and suppressed in many other ways. But rumble.com/Lee Camp is probably the best place for people to find me, or leecamp.com.
Did you say you were in Baltimore now?
Yeah, we moved to Baltimore like 6 months ago.
I didn't even know that.
Aha. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show or patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show.
Thank you guys so much for coming on. I think it's important for there to be tribal powwows in this regard, and for people to see a certain amount of solidarity.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Thank you guys so much for coming on.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
A great group and a lot of very important topics of discussion.
I had totally forgotten that what Lee was talking about, but he's right. So when I was in DC, it was November of 2019, just to give people like a frame of reference how I've grown on this. And we were in DC and we were invited to go meet with, Lee was there, and it was at Max and Anya's house. And so we went there, and everyone was so nice and that, and I really didn't even remember that we were talking about that. But yeah, at that time, I was still in this sort of two-state delusion where I thought that's a thing, and now I know that's not a thing. That was never a thing. It was always a Zionist talking point. It was never meant to be a real thing.
I mean, look at where we are right now. I mean, if you can honestly look at what is happening at this moment and think that it is acceptable to go along with Netanyahu's government. You know, we say a lot that the separation between the American people and our government is pretty stark. Well, the same is true for the Israeli people.
It is.
The same is true for the Palestinian people. The message that is conveyed constantly is anyone who is, I mean, look, there was a person that was following Jen on Instagram who decided that I can't follow you anymore because you support Palestinians because they support Hamas. And the lunacy of what propaganda can put people through is incredible.
Honestly, it doesn't, I am so at peace with it now. I really am. Like, I've never been more comfortable with my position on this. The two-state solution isn't a real thing. That's literally just a talking point. The only options for there to exist an ethnic state, in my opinion, there are only three possibilities for an ethnic state to exist. One is constant militarization and suppression, which is what we've what we've been seeing basically for the past 75 years, some points worse than others, but just a constant militarized show of force, might makes right, oppression of indigenous people. That's the first way you can maintain an ethno-state. The second way is the full-on genocide, which seems to be the way they're going now. I guess they've realized that maintaining military supremacy over these people in an apartheid state is just too much work. So we're just going to go ahead and finish what we really wanted to do, which is just ethnically cleanse them completely by genocide. And that's the second option. The third option of how this could exist is one state that is an actual democracy. And no, it would not be able to be a Jewish. Why? It would not be able to be an ethnic state. There's no way to do it. But really, again, and I say it, unless you are in a place where you are the only people that have ever lived there, and then you want to build your little wall and call yourself a Jewish state, have at it. Have at it. But that's not what happened here. So there is no way for this to go other than one state that's a democracy and is safe for all people, or genocide. Those are the choices that are in front of them. They are clearly choosing genocide. It's just obvious. And as someone who participated in their ethnic cleansing as a useful idiot in 1987, I can tell you they are totally good, just completely erasing that Palestinians ever existed.
Did you see the movie The Delta Force? Is that what inspired you? Is that what really got you going?
No. And the fact that I even know that's a Chuck Norris movie bothers me. But no, I did not see the Delta Force.
I can't help it.
No, but it's like this is an ethnic cleansing. It's been an ethnic cleansing since the 1930s, actually, even prior to 1948. Sure. People don't realize, like, hell hath no fury like me scorned. Because the level of research that I am dipping into, I assure you, I will be able to be close to writing a dissertation on this when all is said and done.
But part of the reason why they are going along to get along, even in the face of an actual genocide, is because very rarely is there a political consequence to pay. Most people don't pay attention to this the way that they really need to. Although I think, in terms of the casual observer, is probably at this point at least aware that something really bad is happening in the Middle East right now.
Something bad is happening.
So you take that into account, but you also take into account who is front and center when it comes to this particular issue and who is cheerleading it on. And unfortunately, our Congresswoman is one of the people who's not only cheerleading it on, but she cannot get her face off of national media. She was just on CNN the other day, and of course is giving her maudlin talk about getting the hostages safe. The supposedly 200 hostages compared to the 10,000 hostages that the Palestinians are under right now.
Can someone tell me how indiscriminately dropping bombs when you don't know where the people are that you're looking for is keeping your hostages safe?
Well, it's already been proven that the Israeli armed forces are also indiscriminately killing Israelis. So this whole idea that there is some noble cause here that is being fought.
Metal, I am not one-sided. You think that if Hamas wasn't there, they'd be negotiating? Well, we created Hamas in the 80s, and there was no negotiating before that. This goes way back. You do not know.
Who do you think's funding Hamas?
Yeah, where do you think that's started?
Where do you think that money comes from? Why don't you do a little research on that? And then you get your answer.
We're not being one-sided. We're just stating facts.
It's funny. People who are on this is like why people can't decide if they really believe in anything or if they're just going along to get along with wherever the particular winds are blowing. We were against what was happening in Ukraine from the very beginning, and we knew exactly where it was heading. We knew exactly why Putin invaded in the first place. And even though that shot across the bow, it was clear that NATO needed to back the F off, and they decided, no, let's have a full-on war, just like in Vietnam. That is exactly where things are. And this is still going on. And even if people think that we've moved on from Ukraine, no, we haven't. Now we could do it under the cover of night and give Zelensky and every neocon everything that they want without it even being announced in the media.
And let us be clear as to who we're arming 100%. In Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. So my congresswoman, who is so very fast to always scream anti-Semitism at every possible turn, but is so on board with funneling money and arms to Nazis. It's bizarre to me. And in all honesty, they are supporting a genocide.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
She's supporting a
Debbie
genocide.
Wasserman Schultz does not have a political challenger as of this moment in 2024, and yet somehow has already raised $1 million for her re-election next year. Would you like to take a look at where some of that money's coming from? Because I'm sure right now it is swimming in all that corporate filth.
Well, it's a lot of AIPAC, I'm sure, and it's a lot of military-industrial complex. It's her usual suspects.
Well, Debbie also takes a hell of a lot of money from big law firms. And why are big law firms a big deal? Because the law firms is where the money gets washed.
Right.
So
That's basically a money laundering situation.
No offense to lawyers,
Sorry.
But
taken.
yeah, and ultimately that's where are they technically breaking the law? No, but it doesn't mean it's not ethical. Because it's not. And so understanding that's just one representative.
But she plays the Jew
many.
card. She has two cards that she plays. One is the Jew card. The other is the breast cancer survivor card. Those are her lanes. She'll also always come out of the woodwork when there's a gun control thing,
100%.
because that's another one where she takes a hard stand because there's no consequences for her. But her main issues are anything having to do with calling out everybody for being anti-Semitic. She is like somehow the poster child for Jews calling everybody anti-Semitic.
And if that's not enough, this anti-labor piece of crap had the audacity to put out a tweet today that got some movement from the liberal crowd about how if it wasn't for Joe Biden, UAW wouldn't have gotten their contract. Now she most certainly did, and so
that is the most sycophantic and let me.
I almost wanted us to respond to it, but I'm like, you know what? Don't even engage her. There's no point.
No.
But the fact that you know what? I'm gonna read to you guys exactly how filthy this.
She really does put the sick and sycophant.
It's because it's beyond the pale. It turns into
Joe Biden is the reason that the UAW situation ended well.
Yeah.
That's why. It was Joe. It was all his hard work. It was his whole 12 minutes of standing there on the line with them. That's what it was. That's what really brought it home.
So this is how Debbie always frames everything. Remember, everything is always against the Republicans. Note to any confused voters, Joe Biden just now, apparently, can't even keep up with dates, just stood on a UAW picket line to help get a big raise for auto workers from Ford, because it was Joe who insisted that they give them the raise, even though that happened over a month ago. House Republicans just elected a speaker who wants to slash Social Security and Medicare from our seniors, even though it's divided government with a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House, or in a Democratic presidency. Don't you understand that anytime there's divided government, the craziest shit always gets to the table, but we all know it'll never pass.
Right.
This is what we call kicking the can down the road.
But she isn't wrong that we now have pretty much like a psychotic Speaker of the House. I mean, this guy's off the chain.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far.
He's got quite a little history in his short tenure there.
Listen, he's part of the Freedom Caucus, I believe. This is like suggesting between Representative Johnson and Representative Jeffries, are you going to get working class economic policy that's going to transform this country?
That's not going to happen.
No, you're not.
But the point that she points at these people like they're so beyond the pale. And I look at her and it's like, you're sitting there and completely condoning a genocide, lady. You're condoning a genocide.
Cheerleading.
Exactly. You're cheerleading a genocide, you sick psycho.
And remember, Debbie is much more sophisticated at this game than somebody like a Jared Moskowitz. He's a rookie. She's running for her 11th congressional term. So when you're in
11
politics for that long,
oh my God,
you learn a few things, like how to say Israel has the right to defend itself against Hamas. What that means is Israel has carte blanche to do whatever the F they want. That's what that means.
Again, I will say to the people that were in here earlier, I do agree that Israel has the right to defend itself. If a sovereign nation were to attack Israel, I would think that it has the right to defend itself.
Travers, did you have to do that? Smart ass.
But the fact that it was not attacked by a sovereign nation. So I don't see how this is self-defense. This was an attack by escaped people from their concentration camps. So this is much more akin to a slave rebellion. And I have seen scholars, people that I respect, people that I watch, really kind of looking at this. Norman Finkelstein mentioned this as well. This is much more in line with Nat Turner's slave rebellion than it is with an act of war. This isn't a war. If people are kept in a prison situation and they break out and attack their oppressor, that's not a war. That's not a war. That's a riot based on conditions that are completely subhuman.
And I definitely agree that the whole intention here is to, as I said, the goal is to commit the mass genocide that they have been wanting to commit for many, many years. And they feel that they have their opening now for a number of reasons. They have a president in this country who is not calling the shots.
He's barely awake.
How do I know he's not calling the shots? As I pointed out on the last live stream, the first person to meet with Netanyahu after the attack was not President Biden. It was President Blinken. He was the first person who had a joint presser with Bibi Netanyahu. Anytime a significant situation like that occurs, it is always the president who goes first, but not this one. And we know why. Because unfortunately, we have a president who isn't arbitrarily making any decisions. And that is a scary place to be right now. It really is. And somebody who is just going to
I don't know what's scarier, having him not being making decisions or having someone like him making decisions.
Either way, we are not in a good place because there isn't one person. And yeah, you got to point the finger at Bernie Sanders because he is not, even in a tepid way, saying that we have to get to the negotiating table. It's like, Bernie, what are you doing?
I can't believe that what Katie just told us that just came through, that they just all signed
unanimously, without even thinking about it.
They're drones. They're drones.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Part of this is because there is a contingent within Washington between both parties, all of the Democrats and a nice, healthy chunk of the Republicans who do not want Donald Trump in the White House again. So they're going to do everything in their capacity to rub elbows to try to make sure that that doesn't happen.
And if that means that they have to condone a genocide,
they'll do it.
They'll do it.
If they think that that's going to help.
Well, apparently they do. Apparently, killing 2.1 million Palestinians is just a small price to pay to keep Trump out of the White House.
And that also begs the question, how much worse this is going to get, because Trump is not going to get challenged. He is going to run away with this nomination like you can't even begin to understand. And there are those who think that he was going to have some type of a challenge. Let me assure you, Governor DeSantis, bleeding support. Governor Haley, bleeding support. Why? Because they are the two biggest neocons running for president right now. I would say Lindsey Graham if he actually was running for president, but nevertheless.
But that's all, folks.
Mm-hmm. So now that you have these two super neocons, full throat, you-know-whating Israel, it's not helping them. In fact, it's hurting them significantly. Donald Trump, of all the people in this country, you know what pisses me off the most? Donald Trump is the guy who, when the wind blows a certain way, maybe in the next week or so, we totally have to call for a ceasefire in the Middle East. It's a terrible thing that's happening.
Well, he just said, right, it's whatever in the moment.
It's really terrible. We have to save those people's lives. They're not innocent. We must destroy Hamas. Hamas is terrible people. But the Palestinians are innocent people. They're really decent
people. You know what? I'm so tired of people.
But you could so see that happen.
I can see it. Well, he'll opportunize on whatever he can. But, the Jewish people, when you're talking about, but Hamas and Hamas, I'm so tired of hearing that. I really am. I'm so tired of hearing it, because the bottom line is that whether or not Hamas was there has nothing to do with the situation that we are ultimately in. That situation started long before Hamas was there.
Chris, the problem that we're in right now.
That's how I feel, Chris. Exactly how I feel. Yeah. I do respect Bernie for taking it as far as he did, but I think I can understand why some people are disappointed, and especially when I hear him signing off on something like this.
It's because we have no real leaders in this moment, and we're so desperate for them. I'm not going to say that Rashida Tlaib or even Cori Bush, and even to a degree AOC, are not doing what they feel they can to lead in this moment. But you know what? It's not enough.
Well, you
If
know
they're
what? But
gonna-
how dare somebody like Moskowitz go after her for doing her friggin' job?
Of course. But therein lies the rub.
Can we invite
There's a-
him on and show him all the millions of ways we've been lied to?
First of all, he
by-
would never come on the show. So
I
it
know,
doesn't-
but then we could at least say we invited him. So
Oh,
like,
sure. I would invite him. He's
I
like,
would
"Come on."
love to go down the list, and we could only stick within the past 10, 20 years. We don't even have to go far back of the amount of lies that have been told by our country. First of all, Israel. You know that their State Department is lying if their lips are moving. Sorry, but you do. Okay, I don't believe a word that comes out of their mouth. And for Joe Biden to sit there and say that he doesn't believe the Palestinian Authority, I'm sorry, they've got some pretty damning, pretty visible evidence and documentation.
As we said at the beginning of the podcast, there were Palestinians on Twitter that were basically going line by line of every person that was
and
killed.
even if they did, you should have to 45% of the people that their homes have been destroyed or damaged. So literally, you have over 1 million people wandering around in rubble with no water, no power, no hospitals, no help, no burn ointment for their babies. And this is somehow Israel defending itself.
And you've got people in the State Department giving pressers
So angry.
in the White House briefing room that are basically saying, yeah, war's terrible and a lot of these kids are going to die. And that's with no hesitation. With no hesitation.
Make no mistake, people, Jews in this country are raised to believe that they are superior to Arabs.
And that is where a lot of anti-Semitism comes from.
We were raised to believe that they are lesser. And when you see that guy, and I wanted to play that, I mean, I don't know if you did that, but like, what was the guy's name? The defense minister person who's the policy advisor to Netanyahu. Guys, there was an interview. This was an interview on PBS NewsHour.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, to me, that's a fairly innocuous news source. PBS NewsHour at minute 14.15, there is an interview with who I think looks like a Nazi. He really does. He sounds like a Nazi, he looks like a Nazi. And basically chuckling away at all the death because they have to get Hamas. And so, these people really do not care because they do believe that Israeli children are more valuable than Palestinian children. They believe that.
Base Chad Thunderjock, thank you for making an appearance. Imagine thinking the invasion of Gaza is to destroy Hamas.
Right.
Well, let's
Exactly.
opine this notion that is what they're doing. Does anybody still not understand that when you go in and you commit mass murder, because that's what it is. We say it's a mass genocide, just say what it really is. It's mass murder because that gets into people's brain. So it's committing mass murder. Do you think you're not going to create more terror cells as a result?
Well, that's the thing. This begins. Bo did a great, guys, I love Bo. Bo, the fifth column, props to him. On his channel, The Roads with Bo, so it's not on his main station, on The Roads with Bo, he did this amazing, he brought the whiteboard, he had a whiteboard, and he did
channeling a little Katie Porter.
And he had the whiteboard, and he created fictional, hypothetical countries and explained the dynamics of how this works. And the moral of the story, which is what he gets to at the end, is that a military solution will never be the solution to this. That's never going to work, ever, ever, ever.
And speaking of Katie Porter, listen, I maintain that the overall best candidate who's running for the Senate in California was Katie Porter. And that was until she decided to saber rattle Iran. Not just say that we have to deal with Hamas, but that Iran must be dealt with in conjunction with Barbara Lee coming out today and saying we absolutely need a ceasefire in Gaza.
She did.
She most certainly did. So hats off to Barbara Lee being the one representative who is really in a position of consequence right now because she's running for the U.S. Senate. And
okay, that does change sort of everything for me.
you know what? I don't care how old she is. I care that she can govern. And when you know who's capable of taking on a position of immense importance, when all the chips are on the table and you must make a decision of consequence. And she's willing to make that decision.
She did it with the war in Iraq too. And that is definitely a big deal. It was a big deal to me then. This is a big deal to me now. Somebody who stands up when they're the only one, that's balls.
Yeah.
That's balls.
And Katie, if you can't get to the left of Adam Schiff, you will lose. And you're probably going to lose anyway. But at least Barbara.
I'm so sad to see that go that way, though. It's like another one bites the dust. I can't.
But at least Barbara's willing to take that chance because Adam Schiff sure as hell ain't going to do it. Not somebody who's as pro-Israel as it gets.
But let me ask you, did Barbara Lee end up signing that ridiculous?
She's not in the U.S. Senate.
No, not that. I know that. When they did that we signed for allegiance forever and ever to Israel, and there were only 9 Congress people that didn't sign it, and I don't think she was on that list. So that's what I'm saying. So she ultimately signed the allegiance to Israel letter. It's like these people just cannot get off the Israel train.
The whole argument, and this is what somebody suggested, because Katie Porter, who is a Democrat and has been successfully able to win multiple elections in a red-leaning district in Orange County, California. Orange County, California is one of the wealthiest counties in the whole country. And it also happens to have a sizable Iranian population. Now, one of the arguments that was made against Jen when she ran for Congress in 2020 was that she could not be going too far left when it comes to foreign policy, particularly when it comes to Venezuela, because we have a sizable Venezuelan population in the congressional district.
We do.
Now, with that said, there are 2 rules of thumb when it comes to the congressional district and when it comes to Venezuelan voters. You do not have to be endorsing a coup of the likes of a Juan Guaido.
No.
You just cannot be endorsing the likes of a Nicolas Maduro, who is subjugating members of their family.
And that's really very particular to our sort
Correct.
of district, where we have to deal with the disparity between rich white Venezuelans and the other Venezuelans.
So what exactly is it that you feel that you're accomplishing, even though you're not technically going to be representing them in Congress for much longer, this idea that you have to kowtow to the wealthy Iranian population of Orange County, California?
So the wealthy Iranian people want
Well, this
us.
is what she perceives it to be, is the reason
You
why
think
she's
that's
saying
why
that.
she thinks we should go in and deal? Okay, nothing good will ever come from dealing with Iran, in the manner that which they're saying. Nothing good is going to come from what they're talking about. It's just only bad. There is no winning a war there.
Listen, there's a lot of things not to like in terms of how.
And by the way, there's a good portion of Iranian Jews.
Sure.
I would like to point that out. I know some Iranian
There may
Jews.
not, and again, there's not a lot of, there are so many negative components to Tulsi Gabbard's evolution as a political figure. But she was pretty staunch about her anti-war rhetoric when she was running for president, and she got herself run out of the Democratic Party. Maybe that was her intention all along, but it really showed that when you do stand up to the military-industrial complex in this country, no matter which side you're on, with rare exceptions to libertarians like Thomas Massie and Rand Paul, they will come after you with everything they have. With everything they have. Whether it is, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, they will do what they have to do. But you couple that with AIPAC and ADL, they will rain holy hell on you. Because for them, their intention is to eventually engulf everything. That's why you had Mr. Billionaire Wexler himself, who is one of the biggest donors to the Harvard Endowment Fund, say, I'm taking my money out of your university if you don't stop people from saying that we should free Palestine. Can you believe that anyone would ever question the validity of a First Amendment right in this country ever again if you're willing to go along with that?
Well, look, 26 states have anti-BDS legislation. Israel has been a source of violation of our First Amendment rights in this country for a really long time. It is also a source of some significant foreign policy problems that we are getting entangled in. There's no winning this. There's no winning this. And you know what? I appreciate that a lot of Jews are very uncomfortable about this. And I would suggest that you think about how uncomfortable the people in Gaza must be right now. That's what I would suggest.
Stop equating people who support the Palestinian people to supporting Hamas. Stop equating people that support the Israeli people to supporting Netanyahu and his government. And stop assuming that Americans who do not want war are going along with what almost every elected official in this country is willing to go along with. You know why they do that? Because they're bought and paid for by corporate special interests, because we have a broken political and economic system.
They're scared of
AIPAC.
AIPAC.
It's broken.
They're scared of them.
There is no limit to how much money they can throw at any one person. Now, granted, in a political race, it isn't so much what your opponent has, it's what do you have, and do you have enough to compete? And if you have enough to compete, then you may be able to pull it off. There are candidates like the Cori Bushes and the AOCs of the world who got outspent in some instances 10-1 and were still able to win because they had enough in order to compete. But most of the time, people do not have enough.
DJ McGee, I'd love to have Ben Norton on. He's definitely one of the people I watch. I mean, I've had a lot of people ask me about news sources and like what I watch and where I get my news. So I thought I would just sort of give like a brief little rundown about that. I mean, my basic news of the day, I will watch Democracy Now! For headlines. I will watch PBS NewsHour every day. Those are kind of like my two staples just to sort of get an idea of what's going on. Then I have to start plugging through by topic. So like different things. So it's either gray zone, breakthrough news, status quo for stuff that has to do with like domestic stuff. The Real News Network, Black Agenda Report I get through email. So like there's definitely a lot of sources, but guys, like I spend hours a day looking into this. Most people don't have time for that.
We are a demonetized channel.
We are and I don't see us getting it back at these conversations.
Not with these conversations. So if you do like what we're talking about, make sure you go over to patreon.com/generational change. You know, it's actually a blessing in disguise. If you all are committed to supporting our channel,
Please.
Your dollar goes a hell of a lot more either on Patreon or Cash App. Why? Because if you donate through the channel,
right,
YouTube takes to 20 to 30% of the money. So why not let all of it go where it belongs, which is to transforming politics into service. You get the Lulu sticker for every $5.
Like I honestly, I would love to just get like a whole bunch of $5 patrons, just knowing that there's that many people that are supportive and that really want to see us keep having like work. I mean, it does take work. I do want to be able to pay our producer and I do want to be able to pay people that do our video work. And it's really, really hard right now because we have really nothing coming in from Google. And I don't anticipate that we're going to get that back.
Well, look, $105 contributors would be amazing, and I think we could pull that off.
That would be
just gotta keep working really
but
hard.
guys, honestly, subscribe and definitely share. If you come on here and you're alive, just share it with one person. If everybody shared us with one person, it would be really helpful. Subscribers and sharing helps. But yeah, patrons are good.
Contributors makes a huge difference. We are thinking of different ways about how we're open to suggestions about how to give a benefit as far as that is concerned. And of course, for those who donate $25 patrons or just $25,
you get the Gen Change jersey. Or you could have the t-shirt. We have both now.
Yes, absolutely. That will definitely make a difference for sure.
It is. It's very helpful, guys. And I do appreciate that. I mean, we don't make money off of this, but we really want to be able to put out really good content. And also, the more professional of a product, it helps bring in quality guests. It's like a catch-22. You know, you do a really good job, people want to be affiliated. If you don't put out good product, then people don't want to be affiliated. And we generally get really amazing guests. The Gray Zone guys are hard to come by. Ben and Aaron and Max. And a lot of that is that they really do like eat, sleep, breathe this stuff. And they're all really kind of out busting ass and doing multiple shows, multiple things. And those are real journalists.
Cash App, $Gen Change. Any amount that you can contribute would be tremendously appreciated.
Yeah.
And
we have a lot of events coming up.
And as our good friend Karina has done,
excellent.
Recommend the friends to subscribe.
Just
click the bell.
And it's free to subscribe, guys. So it's not a hard sell. We have a lot of things going on. Tomorrow, we are going to be at Dania Beach Trunk or Treat from 5 to 8. And that is at the, Forest Park. It's the park in Dania Beach where all their stuff is. We'll be doing that. And then, and then we have another one on Halloween at Plantation. We'll be at the Plantation Park Trunk or Treat on Tuesday.
Speaking of books, if Aaron Monte is writing a book, we also want to give a shout out to our good friend Jordan Cheriton, who is working on his book, hoping he is able to get that taken care of. Obviously, that's why I've been really
liking Ron, though. Ron's been doing a great job covering.
We should have a powwow with Ron. It's been a while.
Yeah, guys. So Ron Placone has been covering a lot for Status Quo for Jordan because Jordan's been working on this book, and I've just been, I'm not going to say anything negative about Jordan, but I've been really digging Ron. I've been getting my news on with Ron, but no, I mean, he does a really good job.
Thank you, Brian. We will have a Halloween show on Monday. We'll figure out what that's going to be like. I'm thinking of a costume. Jen may have one as well. I
don't know. I'm not sure what I'm doing. I can't. I've been trying to get together for all these events and make sure that we have everything we need for that. So
Yeah, well, get through the next few days, and I am grinding very hard to get my business deal taken care of right now. I'm literally on E. I'll be on the street pretty soon if I'm not careful.
you'll be living in here.
I'll actually be living in the studio. I was just going to say,
There's no plumbing here.
it doesn't matter. I'll have.
You're not coming
I'm
in to
clean.
shower. You're not
I'm
coming in the
I'm
house.
clean. I have very good hygiene. So before we go, obviously we would be amiss to not talk about what happened in Lewiston, Maine last night. Obviously, these types of mass shootings, this particular one is different. And the reason this is different is because this was executed like with military precision. And I saw that from the very beginning. And I even said, housemate, when it happened, that I guarantee you this person's from the military. And it turns out that they were.
Did they catch the person, or is it still at large?
Apparently the person is in a standoff, I believe, at this time being. His name is Robert Card. But here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. And this is all you really need to know about this. This was a guy who was on the FBI radar and was in a mental hospital for 2 weeks over the summer, saying that he was planning to commit a mass shooting and had access to firearms, was militarily trained, and ran a gun range. So this is a guy who was deeply disturbed. But as you can imagine, since we do not have a universal healthcare system in this country and everything is for profit, and they do not really want to keep people in these facilities if it isn't making them more money, then lo and behold, this person was discharged. You allowed an actual threat that was on the FBI's radar. You had him in a position where he could not commit this. And for whatever the reason is, that he was not kept in a psych ward or at least in a mental hospital. He has now committed 18 murders, and countless families' lives have been ruined because of this man who easily could have been prevented from doing this. And I don't want to hear nothing about how, well, you know, if he was this, if you had taken, if he wasn't able to get his gun. This guy was a retired military officer. You are not confiscating guns in this country. It's not happening.
Well, and even if you made them illegal, there's too many of them. Like that ship sailed.
Yes. And so for the people that are out there that are going to talk about this issue ad nauseum, which is already happening, what a surprise. Talk about the real problem here.
Get off the hamster wheel, people. Get off the gun control hamster wheel.
That is not why this happened. This happened because our system is broken, completely broken. This didn't come out of left field. The red flags were everywhere for a long
and every
time.
Single gun regulation in place wouldn't have prevented this. There's nothing that would have prevented this, because you can get your hands on firearms illegally. Just as it's not, especially if you're somebody that has that kind of background and experience.
What makes it even worse is that even if you know why this happened, even if the details will eventually come out as to how this could have either been prevented. Thanks.
It's not a good look. I told him it's not a good look. He thinks it's for his Halloween costume.
Do you hear this?
I don't know where he's going with that. It doesn't matter. Nobody will understand this Halloween costume.
Guys, I am trying to channel Mr. Pink from Reservoir Dogs. That's what I'm doing.
But where are you going in that outfit?
I don't know. Can I attempt to have any type of a social life?
No, you are not. No, you can absolutely. So I'm asking you, where are you going in that costume?
I don't know.
So then I'm not the one keeping you from your social life. I'm just curious. I just don't think it's appropriate to a family trunk or treat event in a sense that nobody will know what it is. And I don't think that Reservoir Dogs is necessarily what we should be channeling at a family event.
Josh, I honestly cannot say I'm surprised that somebody like Sean Hannity and especially somebody like Newt Gingrich would say something like that, because everything is about political opportunism with people like that. And the same is true with people on the left who immediately scream, take the guns away from the top of their lungs. That is not what would have prevented this. There was a way to prevent this, but we all know what that would have entailed, which is if we had a universal healthcare system, you would then, by extension, have mental health facilities readily available for people to either check themselves in or have them there because that's where they need to be.
There's a lot of variables. I mean, we've talked about, I generally don't like to cover the mass shootings. I kind of feel like, and it's not because they don't bother me. They bother me immensely. It's just that after Sandy Hook, and I've told the story numerous times, once I saw that, once I went up, I went to DC, I marched, the whole thing after Sandy Hook. And it was like this big epiphany that we are a country that was okay with the massacre of a class of first graders. And once—
Hey, we're okay with a massacre of 3,000 children.
Oh, well, yeah, now. Well, that's now. I mean, but at the
We've
time—
taken it up a little.
we've kicked it up a notch. So once I realized that we were not going to change anything with the massacre of a class of first graders, I knew that the number, the mass of people, the amount of shootings, the number, the exponential isn't going to change that. That's it. Because honestly, if you don't do anything after that, you're never going to. You're never going to. It's not going to be one more classroom will make the difference, one more gay nightclub, one more. None of that is going to matter. You don't change things for a class of children. You never will. And that's what to me, that was my big epiphany. And I just think that, and it's unfortunate, but that's the case. So like, this is just, and I've said before, it's going to just keep happening more and more. And it's just going to keep on happening. It is called the implosion of civilization.
That's what's happening here, guys.
Yeah. This is capitalism imploding on itself. And it's a very slow and painful death. It's affecting us, obviously, domestically. It's affecting us internationally. But yes, what we're watching is the implosion of capital. We spend more money killing other people than taking care of our own people. We like that a civilization like that is not successful. That's a failure.
You know, it was brought up not too long ago, and I'm trying to remember exactly where met. There was a video. There was a very good video on YouTube. I can't remember what the channel was, but they basically broke down why is it that significantly more billionaires support the Democratic Party than the Republican Party. And the reason was pretty simple. They said that the reason the billionaires more to a stronger degree support the Democratic Party is because the Democratic Party protects the capitalist system better than the Republican Party does. And you know what? I agree with that 100%. Because the Republican Party, unfortunately, is to the abyss. What they're basically telling you is kill or be killed. You do not live in a democracy. You live in a constitutional republic that has been overrun by corporate power. And so as a result, you will either be able to swim or you literally will die. Whereas with Democrats, they want to convince you that the system can actually be fixed as it is. Doesn't need any significant changes. You don't need health care. You don't need a living wage. You don't need a universal education system either.
No.
What you need is a little tweak here and there to convince you that if we do not stay in power, the other side's going to come in and screw you over. So that's why the billionaire class prefers the Democrats to the Republicans.
I thought it was just because they're feckless and they don't change anything. So
well, that's exactly, well, they like status quo. Absolutely, 100%.
And there is nothing more status quo than the Democrats.
Mm-hmm. So we have not decided. I've thought about Left Reckoning, a couple of different groups. We got a lot of people.
Those guys.
Yeah. So
I'd love
you think they would be good guests for Halloween?
A lot of people would be good guests for Halloween. I mean, are you talking about not like Ben Burgess? I love him. I've never met him. I'm a fan.
Reach out to him. But there's a couple of them. Well,
I like
the
those
reason.
guys.
The reason why I'm going to invite Left Reckoning onto the podcast is because they just did a complete takedown of who I consider to be the biggest slime ball on the left, and I have he's not even on the left, so we shouldn't even say that he is. But I have no hesitation saying that the biggest slime ball who pretends to be on the left is David Pakman.
Oh,
there is nobody worse, and he embodies what I like to call the beta male, who is much like Lindsey Graham, in that he is so ready, willing, and able to send people off to die, which is why when they were breaking down how badly he has addressed the Israel-Palestine situation, just go back and look at what he said 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when it came to Venezuela. He was totally on board with Juan Guaido taking over that country.
He was for regime change.
That's all you needed.
the interview that we set up for the book thing on the 13th, we have to push it a week. You have to
Oh, you're going to be
reschedule.
out of town?
Well, that's the Monday night that I'm either going to be driving to Asheville or potentially incarcerated. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah,
in
Jen might
Atlanta.
be in jail, so we'll see how that goes. Jen,
And right now, I have no one going with me, guys. I am going by myself at this point.
I'm in a position where I would like to go, but I mean,
You
I'm
can't.
so.
I know. I'm so, like, honestly, I don't know what's going to exactly happen.
We have to
but
try to link you up with somebody that we know. Guys, let us know who you know in the Atlanta.
yes,
gotta
just
reach out
set
to
me up with anybody.
We'll see if
right?
Elmore.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you would think he would know if she were going. You would think he would know if she had plans on going to that. But
Oh, anything could happen. In
yeah, I don't know. Anybody interested in going to Atlanta, November 10th to the 13th? I have an Airbnb, but I do. I have 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms.
So
I always get 2 bathrooms. I don't like to share a bathroom.
neither do I.
And I thought I had somebody coming, and I don't know, and I might, but the truth is if I don't, I really need some. I would almost want to bring Reese. And he's like, "Why, you want me to get arrested?" I'm like, "No, somebody needs to be able to bail me out." You know
Yeah,
what I'm
really,
saying?
that is
Like,
true too. You're definitely going to need.
I know. I really would like to have somebody to go with me. But yeah, anybody, if you're going to be in the Atlanta, Cop City area, action, November 10th to the 13th, yeah, I might need somebody to help bail me out. So I don't know what will happen with that.
So smash the like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you click that bell. We definitely have some new people here tonight. We're always grateful for everyone who shows up. Nelson, Multimind, Bass, Chad, Thunderjock, Sable, always a pleasure. Teresa, we love having you, as you know, a big support of the show. Carne Verde,
You know what,
Travers with his
Teresa?
super.
Yeah, Travers is always trying to get us off.
Yes.
Teresa, we've had Savage Joy on, and look, I like Joy. I know her. She's been a guest it was a long time ago. And then there was an incident.
It's my fault.
There was an incident. And as a result of the incident, Savage Joy does not like us.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was an incident. And it really wasn't any, and I swear to you, I had nothing to do with the incident.
I attempted to break bread with somebody who.
No, he was in the chat.
Yeah, well, that person's intention was obviously not to be.
Somebody who
helpful.
attacked her. Someone attacked her verbally in the chat, who she thinks we were in cahoots with, and brought him in as like we're with him. And I assured her we weren't. But like,
Joy's a very nice girl, but she's been through a lot of stuff. And
she for some reason just
Multimind, Ray J, Chris Garrett, of course, JT Party Hat, Metalopoly, Jamie Ward, Willie Bragg, Britt Mara, all of you guys. We have a show that stays afloat
barely
because of you. Barely.
We're treading,
but we definitely are grateful. And for anybody who, again, would consider becoming a patron, it would
helpful.
really go a long way. And we need it. There's no question that we do.
Exactly, Sable. Meet me in Atlanta, man. I'm going to need somebody to bail me out.
Yeah, well, we'll work on that. We got a couple of weeks, but we'll work on it. So hope you all have a great Halloween weekend. We will have a Halloween show for you on Monday, either in the afternoon or at night. But either way.
I'm still holding out hope for my jersey.
Yes. Yeah, I cannot believe you still.
I don't want to talk about it's ridiculous. This is what happened is I know that these places sold out because the jersey that I want is popular. Well, right now they're all popular. We're not used to having a team here. So the Doll fans are all very excited, apparently, and buying merch. And so it's coveted. They're not normally used to Dolphins fans buying so much merchandise. So they weren't prepared. And that's, I think, what happened.
I actually think if it was a fairly officiated game, the Dolphins could have beat the Eagles in Philadelphia. But hey,
I wouldn't say, look, I'm not going to say that. I was thinking that we were going to lose that game. I wasn't wanting to lose that game, but I had to be prepared to lose that game. And I still think they looked good.
They did.
I think we still have serious snap problems. I think, which is an issue. There's definitely some issues. I think a lot of their issues, though, are lack of experience, a lot of young people that are playing, and a lot of penalties and a lot of stuff. But I think that stuff they'll get under control. But the speed and the talent is really exciting. I haven't had this much fun watching my team in 20 years. Like it's like we finally have a team again. I'm so excited. And it doesn't even I'd love to, win a Super Bowl like that. But just watching good football, it's so good watching and seeing we went 20 years, I think, without even having a conversion on third down. That's what it felt like. I feel like we were just 1-2-3 punt, 1-2-3 punt for so many years that we never watched anything. And I grew up during Bob Greasy and Dan Marino. And so I had a childhood of watching some serious greatness. And then it's just been gone. And now we have it back. We have it back. We have a team. I'm so excited.
Thank you, Metalopoli. And even though we cannot agree on everything politically, we agree on enough, and that's where we need to be.
And you
all need to
know
be
that
fine.
we're trying to do this for the right reasons.
Correct.
And you know that we're in this to try to help people.
We're not
So-
here to dunk on people. We're not here to shit post.
No.
We're here to do the right thing.
Oh, we'll shit post about people like Hillary, though.
Well, that's different. You know, Hillary, whoever that guy was that decided to pull that off at Columbia University, watch her back. That's all I have to say. Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those wonderful things. We appreciate you all. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you Monday.